G'day, Chief. It is wonderful to be here with you again. Today, we want to talk all about how to prepare for annual performance reviews, your one-to-one coaching sessions, when you're assessing talent or when you're about to go through a performance management kind of process. And in particular, what I want to talk to you about is three really important things that are very often forgotten. And when you forget them, you start to run into all sorts of troubles. Now, you know, if you're familiar with Chief Maker, that when we're coaching and developing people, there are only ever three outcomes. Either we improve, we move, or we remove. Everyone is either improving and getting better, we're moving them to roles where they can do a better job, or we're removing them from role so they can go to another life, another career where they're much more likely to thrive, and therefore they're not siphoning or sucking the life out of the team because of their low performance. Now, let's just go back to this thing I said. There's three things you need to know. And when you don't know these, you get into all sorts of trouble. The kind of things that go wrong are you're sitting down and you're looking at their performance and you're having this conversation with them, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. You get this point of frustration where you're trying to raise the bar on them or ask for more, but they just don't know. They just don't know what to do. They can't seem to move. And then you keep going back again and again, and you end up in this vortex or this situation where you're in performance management and months of trouble. Or you're working with a high performer and you're in this annual review process and you don't know what to do to continually deal hope and raise the bar. So here are the three big things. And it is surprising how often we forget these. The first is you have to know what are the dreams and aspirations of the person in role. Now, what I mean by that is, what is their career dream? What's their end dream role? I mean, how can you possibly coach someone, performance manage someone, do an annual performance review if you don't know where they want to be in 5 or 10 years from now? That is like the timeline in careers is not days and weeks and months. The timeline is much, much longer than that. And if we want to build a little bit of a coaching program around them, or we want to provide some additional support, or we want to put in some KPIs that they need to hit in order to get to their dream role, then we need to know what that dream role is. Leaders are dealers in hope. And if we as a leader can provide the pathway from their current role through what we probably might even call a bridging role, which would be their next role to their dream role, then that is fantastic context for when we go to assess their performance. Without that knowledge, we assess against some other key thing, maybe just their KPIs. Now, I'm assuming you already know their KPIs and their current targets and how they're going. That would be absolutely bare minimum. We would never conduct a performance review without that information. This is the bit that gives additional color and context and maybe some information as to why they're motivated or not. It will also be critical for you understanding if they're in the right role, right? Because if you have someone who's in a particular kind of role, but their dream role is nothing like this, or the pathway they're on is never going to get them there, then now is the time to have the conversation about how you get them to where they want to get to. So the first thing you need to understand is what is their dream role and what is the next role or the bridging role that will get them there if it's more than one role away. The second thing you need to really have a good think about is, particularly if you've got some low performance, is anybody thriving? What we're looking at here is what's going on in the system. So, for example, if the business is not going well and maybe you're coaching a sales team, but everyone in the sales team is struggling, or maybe you're at an operational land and there's lots of customer complaints or bad service levels you're not happy with, right? But it's happening across the board. What we can sometimes do is get into one-to-ones or performance review discussions and start to lay it on heavy on the individual when there's bigger systemic issues at play. We need to know that more broadly, because when we have a sense of that as a coach, as a leader, as a chief, then we can coach more effectively, right? If we know the dream role and we know what's going on in the system and the way the business is operating, that gives us really good context before we start coaching. The third big thing, which goes directly in hand with the current performance of the system, is where does my team need to be in 6 months? So many times I've been in one-to-one discussions with a leader, and we'll be talking about maybe a low performer in their team they're trying to turn around. And I'll say to them, okay, where does that person, what's their performance need to be in 6 months from now in order for the team to be hitting its targets and the company to be nailing its results compared to where they are now? So let's say maybe they've got sales of $1 million, but we need them to be at 1.4 million per year, as an example, for the business to get its results. Do you know where they need to be or how good they need to be performing within 6 months? Because that will give you the gap or the delta that as a leader and as a coach, you need to help them get to. We need to be really, really clear on that, because if we're not clear on where we need to get them to, the difficulty or the challenge of the journey is not necessarily apparent. And therefore, we don't necessarily push hard enough or we don't inspire them enough. This is just as important with low performers as high performers, because with high performers, very often we go and say, hey, look, you're doing your 1.4 million. This is wonderful. But where I need you to be now, you've got to raise the bar on high performance. You've got to really drive them and give them some real spirit. So maybe that's got to be 1.6, 1.7. So when you get into that performance conversation or that coaching session, you're looking for the 1%ers, how to go to the next level. This is so important. Now, if we put those three things together, you know the dream role and the next role for that individual. You know what's happening at a system level across the business. How is everybody performing? Is there problems within the system that we need to fix, as well as the performance of the individual? That's critical. And then the last thing, of course, is where do you need them and the team to be in 6 months from now? Now, I can't imagine coaching without those three things, because it would be nearly impossible to deal hope. It would be impossible to examine where the right performance improvements need to be. And it would certainly be impossible to track if we're being successful as a leader and as a group of people. So, Chief, put those three things in your kit bag before you get to the annual performance review. Sit down. I know you're going to have all the KPIs and all the metrics and targets, but just then ask yourself, what is this person's dream role and next role? Is anybody thriving? Where are the systemic issues or the business operational issues here? And, right, where do we need to be in 6 months, right? Because very often the journey you've got to take with someone in 6 months is too far. They're never going to make it, right? So that might be when we have to do the move or remove. Chief, over the next little while, I'm also going to teach you through the podcast and our YouTube channels and give you an introduction to the Chief Maker coaching model, which is called the Deal Hope coaching model. We'll get to that. But what I want you to just focus on now is getting the mind ready and getting your performance ready as a coach. You have to take on that mantle, that mindset of being a coach, right? This person in your team, their career is in your hands. That's a privilege, right? That is a real privilege. So we've got to take that seriously and really take our game to a new level as a coach. And over the next little while, I'll certainly be helping you with some core skills, frameworks, and mindsets in order to do that. Righto, Chief, I hope that gets you started and prepared for any performance reviews, coaching sessions coming up.